Making sense of SAP. Welcome to our New Year update for 10K followers, CFOs and CIOs out there. Alistair, what's the big news?
Yeah, pretty seismic. Um, as we predicted at the back end of last year, off the back of the Q3 investor call, we said that we believed that SAP would add ECC into RISE, and we also predicted that RISE would be extended. Um, and that's the big news. So SAP unofficially, it's unofficial on LinkedIn at the moment, but it's the talk of the internet. So SAP are saying that they're going to extend ECC on RISE through to 2033, which makes it a really ancient product, but it also takes it through to almost end of life for S4 as well, which is really interesting, 18 years. You know, that's pretty seismic. What do you think about it, Paul?
So that makes ECC almost 28 years old by the time it gets retired in 2033 and S4 18 years old.
Yeah,
So,
I think we
wow.
both did ECC5, didn't we, before the
Yeah,
ECC6 cracked out? So yeah, we're ancient.
it's no gray hairs, no greenhorns, gray hairs, mate. So can you unpack that? What does it all mean?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. So I've been getting really animated and excited in a positive way since that Q3 investor call. I've absolutely think Christian Klein's nailed it. I think his leadership's first class. Um, and what he basically said was, do you know what? He's been getting in and getting dirty. He's taken over the sales organization. He's listened to all the critique about the RISE contract, both in terms of the commercials, the RACI, the service levels, and what's included. And he said, I'm going to fix this. Okay. And we predicted that RISE would go in, ECC would go into RISE. He'd fix all the issues in terms of the contract for RISE. And we said that RISE would become holistic so that it would include the entire SAP product range. And we predicted that. So I think this is all part of this joining the dot strategy. This is all part of SAP saying, do you know what? Um, we get you. And because Christian sort of like had to get in dirty to working with the customer, he's saying, we get you. We now understand the customer's dynamic. Everyone's on their own journey. And we just get that some people are going to move to S4. And for some people, ECC is still the right place. Or put it another way, and we'll talk about this in a minute, the whole dynamic around how organizations consume change is changing. So I think Christian's listened. And I think what he's saying is, I want to take us back to 2006. I want to take us back to that great place where we were able to sell all of our products to every customer who wanted it. And he's basically saying, like, agnostically now, let's bring you in and then let's sell you everything we can. And that's joining the dots. So ECC6 customers, that loyal customer base, can really start consuming the entire product base.
So do you think was there a bit of confusion into the customer with too many products, too many updates, too much news, AI, end of support, rise, grow, hyperscaler, Joule as in AI again, working on business use cases for AI. Lots and lots of news coming out, like WalkMe, lots of stuff coming from Sapphire. Do you think the customers were confused with it all?
Yeah, I do. And I'll give you a really good example. I had a leading SI today message me and fundamentally got it wrong in terms of the relationship between S4 and BTP. The consultants, the SIs don't quite understand the whole S4 piece. And you called it out yourself, Paul, in terms of you've got on-prem, you've got public, you've got private, you've got concierge, so many flavors for S4. And what people weren't listening to really was just the customer in terms of just what's important to the customer, you know. There's just constant change in terms of tech. So this year it's AI, next year it's quantum. What does that mean? It doesn't equate. It doesn't, it's not what a CFO wants. It's not what a CIO wants. It almost became what did SAP want to sell in at that point in time, and no one was listening to the customer. So the customer was really confused about what SAP were trying to flog them. And the reason they were confused was because SAP was so siloed. So you'd have different sales teams flogging different bits of SAP instead of just one sales team facing off against the customer, listening to the customer, having empathy with the customer, and really understanding what SAP tooling would really add value to that customer at that point in time.
So does this have any knock-on effect on business by design and business one?
Um, I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is just because there's a movement going on anyway, whereby S4 public is really successful. So I think we'll be up to over 9,000 by the end of this year. Linked to by design will take us to 22 in that sort of like mid-tier ERP cloud space, taking on NetSuite. But I don't think so. I think there's a success story around ERP, so S4 HANA public cloud anyway for the mid-tier. And I think we're going to start to see more and more ECC6 customers, which are below the global 2000, maybe moving on to sort of like a clean core vanilla S4 public. But I don't think that dynamic's there. No, I think this is really about your big sort of like on-prem traditional ECC customers who have got a very big SAP landscape, multiple ECC systems, probably a BW. They've got everything, haven't they? And it was just too difficult to come to terms with having to do a lift and shift. So I think every SAP customer is unique in terms of what the SAP they've got, the enterprise architecture they've got, on what their roadmap's going to be. And SAP tried to make it far too generic, and they've walked away from that now. And I'm really pleased and excited by that.
So lots of people said, or predicted, for want of a better word, that the 2027 date would move. Does this move to 2023? Does
No,
that equate to a move?
no, not really, because SAP, and we don't know because it's all conjecture at the moment. It could be urban myth. We could all be slapped down tomorrow by Christian. But this is about saying there's a path if you want there to be a path, but it's absolutely linked to Rise. If you don't want to move to Rise and you want to stay, if you want to move to S4 outside of Rise on your own hyperscaler or in your own data center on-prem, no, no, not at all. You're stuck. You're stuck with 2027 or 2030. So it comes back to what we do at Dragon in terms of we already have an ECC6 upcycling strategy and sort of like service where we can take a dirty, nasty, legacy, doggy ECC6 system and we can take it up to enhancement pack 6. We can stick it on a hyperscaler. We can give them better analytics. We can give them better UX. We can do all that stuff. And working with Rimini Street, we can take it to 2035, 2040 easy. So there's a path anyway for customers who don't want to go into the SAP Rise ecosystem. But then why wouldn't you? Because the tooling SAP have got, whether it's CX, Business Network, AI Foundation, whatever, data sphere going forward to replace BW, there's some good kit there. So you would want to invest in SAP if you could.
So you've explained what it means for the customers. Clarity, but
Mm.
they give them a chance, gives them room to breathe, I suppose, gives them a chance to build a roadmap. What does it actually mean for SAP?
Um, I just think it enables SAP to um, unshackle themselves from the chain they put around their neck around S4, because I think they put themselves in a silly place around S4 in terms of you must move, it's got to be clean core, all this type of rubbish. The success with public clouds proved that S4 Public's a great product. S4 just in general is best of breed ERP, and I think it just means to SAP moving forward now they're going to get to the vision of being a cloud only enterprise, business by 2025. But it just means they can upsell everything. That an ECC customer now can consume everything. Stick them in Rise. You can give them a bit of BTP or as much or as little as they want. They can have AI Foundation. All that rubbish before, in terms of if you're not on SAP Cloud, you can't have AI. Absolute dross. We all knew that. They can have AI. They can have whatever they want, really. I mean, it's going to be great for SAP because they can really upsell and it should drive revenue and it should make the bonds with the customer stronger again. I think it's a win-win for SAP.
Excellent. So I suppose the million-dollar question is why now?
Mm. I think because 2024 was really strong. I think we're going to see some strong figures coming out at year end. I think this is a great time to do some tidy up before year end. So bring out your dead, sort it out. So I think there's a tidy up. I think it's very good as well because when you look at the detailed accounts from SAP and you go into the detail, you still see that a lot of the revenues coming out of ECC maintenance or legacy maintenance are not RISE. And this is a great way to simplify that revenue stream going forward. So predominantly all SAP's revenue will be cloud orientated going forward. And that RISE contract will become far more expansive. So you'll have your ECC in RISE, you'll have your BW in RISE. And as you said to me this morning, it's about just doing a bit of a switch over between your ECC or BW or legacy maintenance model you've got at the moment and switching them into a RISE model. And that's good, from a customer perspective as well. So I think it's about tidying up before the year-end results. Okay. I think this is about Christian Kine made a commitment to the investors that he'd sort out RISE. Okay. And I think he's done that and he's doing that. And also Thomas on the service side. So I think they're delivering to promise on that. He said he was going to sort out his sales organization and make it more punching, starting to be better for the customer and to unify all those points, joining the dots. I think he's doing that. So this is about him proving to the investors he's delivered to promise. It's about saying SAP's delivered to the strategic vision. Okay. And I think it's about going back to what SAP doing really well, which is listening to the customer and focusing on the customer's needs, opposed to focusing on SAP's own agenda, which he was doing too much of going forward.
So is there a how here? As in, how will this happen? Do ECC customers just stay on their own perpetual licensing? Do they go to RISE? Does that mean subscription licensing? Do they have to upgrade to S4 or the next version of SAP when it comes out? Or how do you see it working?
Yeah, I think it's really a complex subject. So I think the first point is I don't believe there is a connection between moving your ECC into RISE and having to commit to S4. I don't believe that. I don't think SAP would say that. I think the first commitment is just bringing ECC into RISE. They don't make any money from the infrastructure, but it's that whole upsell piece. Okay. If you link it to S4, you're going to scare the client away. And I think the reason, so that's the first thing. I think there's obviously going to be some conditions around moving into RISE for an ECC. They might make it like concierge in terms of there might be a baseline in terms of where you are in terms of your ECC HP and in terms of your NetWeaver stack potentially. So that but I think what this means is it means that the customer can move its ECC in with little effort because it become more of a technical migration, little impact on the business. Okay. Very little impact, bit of regression testing, more basis. I think from a licensing perspective, it's a great time to negotiate. SAP want you in to their cloud revenue base opposed to outside. They want you as part of that long term so you can do some great deals, I reckon, as you move across. I also think if you take your ECC into RISE, you will never move to S4. And that's a bold statement, but what I mean is, I believe that by 2033, as you said, S4 will be 18 years old, right? That's end of line for S4, I reckon. I reckon the amount of innovation we're going to see in the S4 piece is going to really dip over the next couple of years, like we saw in by design. It's all going to go into BTP and AI Foundation. And I think SAP already know what the replacement of S4 looks like or what's coming down. And it's going to be an AI-centric, AI agent-driven, process federated AI ERP system. And I think you'll be able to migrate from ECC to whatever the AI ERP looks like with ease by 2033. So I think SAP knows what's coming, and I don't think they're too bothered anymore about that move to S4.
So would it, like we discuss all the time when we're all in the office, ECC6 today is not the same ECC6 that was released in 2005. does that could they keep the same name for S/4HANA, but it will not be the same product?
No,
They,
no, I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. It's a really good question. And the reason why is because, first of all, let's just deal with the thing which really winds me up all the time. There are some absolute nut job consultants out there who constantly say ECC is a legacy ERP system, okay, which is like, I don't know, 20 years old, and you're using processes from 20 years ago. There are some absolute dog ECC systems out there on EHP4, which have not been upgraded. They haven't been touched, okay, and they are ancient, but they're still doing a job. And if the customer's happy, don't slag off the customer for being happy. They know more about their business than we will ever know. But I think most ECC systems are the ECC of 2025. They've been well maintained. The RICEF is still adding value. So imagine you've got RICEF, which was developed 15 years ago, still working. What a fantastic return on investment. That's not tech debt. CFOs will love that type of investment. Brilliant. So ECC of today, okay, is the ECC of 2024, not the ECC of 2006. I think that's really important. So there's no reason why a well-maintained ECC with RICEF, which isn't working, with a bit of Fiori linking up to a BTP, can't be sustained well to 2033. There's just no really good business case. And as you asked me the other day, they'll probably invest in Fiori. You're probably going to get dual dropped into some form of Fiori, which ECC can consume. Why wouldn't you? The investment's low, and the customer will pay for it. It's revenue, revenue, revenue.
so I think that conversation a couple of days ago was,
Mm,
does Fiori work on
mm,
ECC?
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So is there something, let me reformat that. Um, is there a minimum criteria for customers to get from where they currently are, being mindful that heck wasn't that successful? It,
Yeah.
it was a great idea, but lots and lots of different configurations. Is there a minimum entry criteria for your landscape to get into the Rise subscription? Or
I,
will you
I, I
just
would.
take everything?
I think it's a good question. I imagine there would be Paul. I think it'd probably be around EHP6, and I probably think that NetWeaver's got to be up to date. So it's got to be tidied up. But I think most SAP customers are used to there being a 4 or 5 year cycle anyway, where they know they need to keep up to date with the patch, and they know they've got to do all that stuff anyway. So, I mean, that's just good ITIL. So I don't think that's certainly from a capital expenditure cost. If they came to us, we could do that fixed price. We could do that entire piece in terms of you're fantastic at negotiating with SAP around all things licensing. Okay. We certainly have got the assets in terms of the ability to do the phase zero and work out the total sum of what does it mean to take the customer into RISE. There'll be very little push on the business because it's basically one big regression test. So we could, so the impact on the client's going to be low to take them across anyway, and the cost will be minimum. People like us can do it fixed price. So to do that, to get it in and then subsequently to take you through to 2033 and be able to start to play with all the jewels in the SAP toy box, I mean, that's a win-win scenario, isn't it?
So let me just clarify the answer there. Like Dragon ERP will
Yeah.
help you to upgrade to EHP6
Mm.
or greater, including the NetWeaver stack if it's needed. But it's on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
What do you need to get there? And what do you need, Mr. Customer, Miss Customer, to make you successful to get you there? So are you saying that we'll help them with their EHP upgrades, or
Yeah. Yeah.
what about the custom code and I know the RICEFs are all good. What are we going to do with the RICEF? Are we going to put them into BTP? Are we going to leave it
No.
in the ECC or what?
No, I think it's a really good question. I think there's another point to the equation as well. Okay. So I think the other bit of the equation is that clearly Rise is all about that relationship with hyperscalers. Okay. So we'll work with the customer to really work out, and they've probably got these customers are savvy anyway. They probably have already got sort of like multiple relationships with multiple hyperscalers, whether it's GCP, Azure, or AWS. So the first bit is just that which hyperscaler, what flavor do you fancy in terms of Rise, just going forward? That's a side thing. But I think in terms of the Rice FW, as we've always said, Clean core is a ridiculous notion. It's sort of like it, it it means well because it means well, but it's too much of an absolute, pushes the customer into a corner. So tidy core. We will work with the customer to look at what needs to go across first of all. They're going to have loads of sort of like RICEF, which they no longer use, which are redundant. So we always tidy up anyway. We never take a dirty core. We always take a tidy core, right?
Um,
So we take what a customer needs to operate on, and we
well,
we leave the dross behind. Do we put it in BTP? Why would we? I mean, no, because you're adding a layer of complexity at that point in time. SAP might want to sell that, but also don't forget, linked into the end of life for ECC is also the old end of life in terms of like PO. There's
mhm.
also that piece going on in terms of the need to move integration into what is cloud integration now in BTP. Yeah,
Or an integration suite or
yeah,
cloud
yeah.
integration.
Yeah, so that's yours. So there's that need to do that. So we'd obviously look at that whole sort of like RICE FP, the whole integration piece, and look at where does that sit best. But as part of that whiter architecture the customers got, they might have a bit of MuleSoft or something working in the background, or a bit of Snowflake or some awful god middleware system. So we do that phase zero piece. When we do the lift and shift of the ECC estate into RISE, we'll do that whole piece. What does it mean in terms of people, process, technology? What's the total cost to move it? What's the total cost of ownership moving forward to 2033? And we do all of that working with the CIOs too.
So people have used different terminology from lift and shift, but I think we had a different lens on that. Right? I think it was lift and grow,
Yeah.
lift.
Was it lift
We,
and flip, or was that the private equity thing we were doing?
that's for the private equity,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But then there's a lift. I think it's lift and go.
Lift and
Uh,
go. Yeah.
yeah. So where you are now, lift and land and be ready to go, hit the ground running. Uh, I think that's the way to go with it. Excuse the double entendre there. But yeah, it sounds good. So where's the downfall? Where's the who's losing in this?
I think it's interesting. I think people would say, isn't there some reputational damage for SAP? Because for years they've been saying you've got to get off of your ECC by 2025 or 2027 or 2030, and now you don't. I don't think so. I think the whole point about SAP's product singularity and sex singularity is everything's moving forward so rapidly, you just don't know where you're going to be in 2 years' time. So that's why it's a safe bet for an ECC customer to go on to Rise. But I also think you can't ask SAP to be too prescriptive because you just don't know. So I think they're doing the right thing. I think it's a really good way out. I think it's a really good pressure valve, Paul. It takes the pressure off. It gives people a route. It's another option. No one can ever say that SAP have put a gun to anyone's head because they haven't. So I think they behaved really well here. If it is true that this is going to happen, so I think SAP haven't lost. I think they're the winner. I think the real losers are going to be our pals, the legacy SIs and the big four body shops. I mean, they've got big old teams out there, all geared to S4. It's not going to happen. This tsunami of S4 is just not going to happen. There's a bigger tsunami of S4 upgrades for the early adopters. I think going forward, it's all about smaller fractional teams. It's the type of stuff we do. Small fractional teams dropping in, being there when you need to do it. And what, before Christmas and part of our messaging's being, we see the customer wanting to consume AI, consume better analytics to really leverage the tech, but to get quicker return on investment to do it through quicker delivery cycles. They don't want to do rip it out, start again S4. They want to get innovation, as you said, get going. So that means smaller fractional teams. So I think the big consultancies are going to lose out. The legacy SIs are going to lose out. It's as simple as that. And I think the people who are going to benefit most are the customers who are still on ECC and have not decided because they've just got another stellar option.
So they don't want to go down the road of uh, being negative about any of the SIs, but we've all seen bad behavior. Look at
Yeah.
the client we spoke to this week, who are we're thinking of bringing a client who are already on S4
Mm,
back to ECC, and we put a
mm,
stop on that.
mm.
Uh, I've seen big SIs coming in 2023 recommending ECC for manufacturing and S4 for commercial until we explained that the systems don't really talk to each other without a lot of middleware and that crazy stuff. I've also seen SIs wanting to upgrade from it's a few years ago from was it 1907 was it? No, what was that version? Uh, was it 1907 to 1909? Uh, but they were using trying to put the customer under pressure because they'd screwed up the data model
Yeah. Look,
and they were trying to cover themselves. That's all
look,
really bad behavior.
yeah, look, we see it every day. I think I think one of the benefits and my final sort of like wrap up of this would be um there's no doubt but once the customer moves their ECC onto Rise, they will then be able to move to a more modular model to consume S4. So, so in the same way as we've built out our foundation model for S4 HANA public cloud, the ability to consume S4 public, but in bite-sized chunks. So we do finance and then we do everything else. I think you can see the same from ECC customers slowly adopting S4 if they need it. So you might have, we've always said there are some good elements to S4. There's a strong business case in some areas. So you might have a customer wanting to, I don't know, leverage advanced available to promise or some of the manufacturing stuff. So you might see this two-tier model developing where either the customer, moves or finance onto S4, leaves the rest of it onto ECC, or vice versa. Gives the customer a lot of scope to go forward to innovate where they need to innovate, call off SAP's cloud product base where they need to do it, and it's just a win-win situation.
So I always like to challenge you, Alistair. What there's currently a lot of pushback in the market from customers about the expense of cloud. I know it's
Yeah.
not directly related to SAP or any other ERP. That cloud is working out a bit more expensive than the on-premise. Um, where do you see that sitting? Is that going to be, could that be a pushback against Rise, against Grow? And
No,
do people want to stay on-prem?
no, I think you're right, absolutely right. Um, and we saw this, didn't we, start to develop from some of the stuff you were posting coming out of Dublin, whereby sort of like Dublin's just grown into this huge, one of the biggest data centers in the world, hasn't it? And it's sort of like consuming so much of Ireland's energy just into sort of like data centers. But I think there's a sea change going on, and it's just almost in the last week seeing sort of like Larry stand up with Muskie and talk to Trump about spending, was it £500 billion worth of money on AI and cloud infrastructure in the States yesterday, and what they're going to build. And at the same time, listening to how Keir Starmer's going to build out a sort of like a Orwellian um, digital infrastructure for the UK to police us by. I, I think the investment in cloud is just going to go up and up and up. The ability to source the energy is going to be the issue. But I think, look at some of the deals which have been done recently. A lot of those deals being done in the SAP space. Look at Sainsbury's, wall to wall S4 in the cloud. Look at what's going on with HMRC, just done the S4 deal. No, it's going to be wall to wall. So there's some really big SAP estates. No one's really thinking about energy. I think when you drop down, and when you start to think about organizations that got to do green line reporting and that whole ESG element in terms of in your reporting accounts, you're going to have to start to talk about your carbon footprint and your tech is starting to, with AI, develop a really nasty carbon footprint, which you're going to have to report upon in your accounts. I think that's going to then start to make organizations think about their holistic carbon footprint. Okay, because they want EAI, they want the tech, so they're not going to save. They don't want to save there. They're going to save elsewhere, aren't they? So maybe less travel. Who knows? Um, but I think it's a good segue into again. what SAP do well in that space in terms of ESG and the green line stuff we reported upon just over Christmas. The new green line functionality, the sustainability control tower, all that good stuff SAP reports on. It's going to be important to the mid-tier and customers just above that to have transparency about their tech carbon footprint. And that transparency is then going to make them save, do carbon offsetting elsewhere. I think that we're past that point where we're going to go back to on-prem, except for geopolitical circumstances, maybe like the BRICS or mad people like Putin.
Yeah, we'll just wrap up on that.
Mm.
But the last point I would kind of like to run on that is the more data centers, more AI demand for power, water,
Mm.
etc. But the grids in all countries can't sustain that unless bigger data centers, more power. That's going to impact their net zero targets by 2050, right?
Well, one would imagine so, but one would imagine, and it's a conversation for a different video,
Hmm.
but it's World Economic Forum this week at Davos, and obviously key agenda item is AI. And one of the points around AI is the vast amount of money which is being wasted at the moment. And I can't remember how much it is. I mean, just just 1 second, but I had it in my phone. But the amount of money which is wasted on AI so far is just incredible. I think it's something like 80% of AI programs are unsuccessful. Um, and you're talking about trillions of dollars worth of investment in AI has been wasted so far, and that's going to be the big topic this week at sort of Davos in terms of how do you make AI really work for you. Um, and there's two, and we've got a schism going on. We've got what Trump's doing in terms of it's all about driving the economy, and then there's people like Keir Starmer. It's about draconian and basically shackling the British people. You could go either way, couldn't you?
Excellent. Great to chat to you as always, Alistair.
All right.
Let's maybe catch up again on this soon.
See you later, mate.